So far in this video series, we've defined the trigonometric functions. We have evaluated the trig functions at different trigonometric points, and we have neglected the whole part that they are functions, right? Functions carry many different properties with them. We will get to all sorts of fun properties with trigonometric functions eventually. First of which would probably be domain and range, because we have to make sure that we're working within the right confines. But maybe a beginning question is, where are the different trig functions positive or negative? And to help us with that, we can turn to the units or to the unit circle and also the coordinate plane. Okay, so what do we remember about the coordinate plane? We know, okay, so this is traditionally called quadrant 1 in the upper right. Upper left is quadrant 2, and then the third quadrant is in the lower left, and quadrant 4 is in the lower right. Okay, in each of these quadrants, we might remember that we have, let's see, so if we express the coordinates in each of these, in quadrant 1, we'd have both coordinates being positive. In quadrant 2, we'd have the first coordinate being negative, that's a negative x, and a positive y. In the third quadrant, both coordinates are negative, and in quadrant 4, we'd have a positive x and a negative y. Okay, and so we just got done defining the different trig functions, right? So in quadrant 1, this is x, this is y. We remember that sine is x, or sine is y, sorry, sine is y. So sine would be positive, cosine would be positive, and then because sine and cosine are positive, tangent's positive. Tangent is positive. And then when we look at their reciprocal functions, since sine, cosine, tangent are all positive, that means all the reciprocal functions are going to be positive. So in quadrant 1, all trig functions are positive. Okay. In quadrant 2, okay, if I look at sine of t, I'm just going to maybe abbreviate these a little bit. Cosine of t, tangent of t. Okay. Sine is our y, that's positive. Cosine is our x, is negative. And then when you do a positive divided by a negative, you get a negative. Okay, so and then the reciprocal functions will follow suit. So in quadrant 2, only sine is positive. Okay, so now what about quadrant 3 and 4? See if you can figure out which trig functions are positive or negative in quadrants 3 and 4. All right, so in quadrant 3, sine, which is the y coordinate is negative, right? So sine is negative, cosine is x is negative. And then when we do negative divided by negative, we get a positive. So tangent and its reciprocal, oops, I need to write that out. Tangent and its reciprocal, cotangent, both of those are going to be positive. Okay, in quadrant 4, we have sine, y coordinate is negative, cosine is positive, that's the x, and then we have negative divided by positive, we get a negative. So only cosine and its reciprocal secant are positive in quadrant 4. Okay, and so for me, I remember mainly where the different trig functions are positive, and notice that we have all sine, tangent, and cosine. And so there's a little acronym that I remember, ASTC, then that helps me remember where the different trig functions are positive. But the mnemonic that goes along with that is all students take calculus, or again, the A would correspond to all trig functions, S is sine, T is tangent, and C is cosine. So all students take calculus helps me remember where the different trig functions are positive. Okay, and then like sine, if I know I'm in quadrant 2 and I know sine is positive, then the other ones are all negative. Okay. All right, so identify the quadrant that satisfies the stated criteria. I actually want you to see if you can do this on your own. So pause the video, try these examples, and then resume the video. Okay, so sine is positive, that's positive y, right? And then, so we're in either quadrants 1 or 2. So maybe this tells me that it's in 1 or 2. And then secant being negative, that's the reciprocal of cosine. So when cosine is negative, I'm in quadrants 3 or 2 or 3. And the only quadrant that satisfies both of those is quadrant 2. Okay? Next one, I'm going over to the right tangent. Tangent is positive. That occurs in 3 and 1. Cosine is negative. Cosine is negative in quadrants 2 and 3. So then the only thing that satisfies both of those is quadrant 3. I'm leaving the secant non-negative for last. Actually, no, we'll do that one next. Secant is non-negative. What does non-negative mean? Okay, that means 0 or larger. Okay, so if secant is positive, right, that's what it's saying. Secant is positive, so that's where x is positive. So this is x is greater than or equal to 0. And the 0 piece gets a little interesting. Technically, we would have quadrants 1 and 4, okay? And secant would be 0 nowhere. Secant is 0 nowhere. Because if you think about this cosine, secant of t is 1 over x. And if this is equal to 0, we'd have to have 0 in the numerator. So this can't ever happen. So it's just in these two quadrants. And this was kind of a trick question. Can you have just one? No, this 2 can happen. Okay. Next one, cosecant is greater than 0. So cosecant is positive. That's what this is saying. And then sine is negative. But okay, just wait. Cosecant is positive, so that's sine. Sine is y, so it's 1 over y, where y is positive. That would be 1 and 2. And then sine negative, wait, that just violates what we just wrote, 3 and 4. So I'm going to say none. There are no quadrants that satisfy that condition. So be careful is the point of the story here, okay? Instructions may be misleading intentionally or unintentionally sometimes. So yes, big takeaway is to remember or to just be aware of where the different trig functions are positive and negative and use the acronym ASTC or the mnemonic All Students Take Calculus to help you remember this fact.